All right, let's get started to respect that you guys are dialing in during these lunchtime sessions. So welcome all. Before I kick off and explain a little bit more about today, I'd like to acknowledge that we are here today on the land of the Gadigal and Bidjigal people who traditionally occupied the Sydney coast. On behalf of the Wellbeing Australia community and all of our members, I would like to acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people attending today or dialing in our future recordings viewing. And I pay my respects and our respects to elders past, present and emerging. So welcome everyone. I am Catherine Taylor. I'm one of the directors of Wellbeing Australia, and I welcome you warmly to day 4 of our First Responder Summit for 2022. Today's going to be a really exciting day, and it's come from a lot of conversations that we had in 2021. So I'll give a little bit of background in terms of where we have come up with the importance of this actual topic we're talking about. For those of you that don't know us at Wellbeing Australia, we are a national organisation that's a not-for-profit, so we're not connected to any other government or other organisations. We're here purely for positive, proactive wellbeing management strategies to help you, our community, which does encompass Australia, but also a lot of people overseas. Here today, we're talking about first responders in a very broad scope. We noticed in a lot of our work that first response tended to link to someone who had a badge or a paid role, yet our experience was how broad the community really was. So when we're speaking about first responders or the impacts on wellbeing for first responders, we're speaking of people who are paid, people who are unpaid, people across agencies, people across community and volunteer organisations, and friends of families who are connected to those people. Particularly at the moment, with all the events that are occurring, we see our communities come together. And so those that are responding to these emergencies quite often are not trained or in a formal role with it, but they are the people that are tending to and experiencing these crises. So we thank everyone who's doing that, and we really are trying to offer some strategies and solutions to support you all, not just through this time, but ongoing. Our summit has come through with the core themes of living well, and we're looking at living well through a number of different perspectives. Through connection, and that's connection with yourself as well as your community, through accessing and sourcing hope, having that optimism for the future, and having an understanding of community and the support that is there for you. So everything that we do is very much coming through in those three themes. Today's session is very much about that self-connection, but also can help us as a broader community. So before I kick off and introduce our speaker, I'd just like to mention that for those of you who are wishing to share questions, stories, or have anything answered, please put any questions in the Q&A. We invite you to share where you are at the moment, so where around Australia or the world you are, and what's your connection with first response, so that we can make sure we're actually giving you as much as possible in terms of who and what is important to you. So just in terms of welcoming our speaker, can I please welcome Mari? Anyone who's raising their hand, can I get you to just pop through into the Q&A to get started while I get our speaker up to start her discussion with us, and I will definitely be sharing any responses to your questions, so thank you all. Q&A is neutral and anonymous so that you can remain private if you wish. Mari Ball is our speaker here today, who has a wealth of background and experience working in a number of different areas, government and not-for-profit sectors particularly, so a great connection with that voluntary organisation as well as those agencies that we're speaking about connecting with. And Mari has over 25 years working in a lot of HR capacity. So HR first response, Mari, very much coming in and helping our people, which is why we're here today. You're also involved in lecturing at uni, so we're looking forward to you really sharing that wealth in terms of how we can zone back into us and keep that learning journey. So welcome, Mari.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me here today, Catherine.
Absolute pleasure. So last year's summit and what has happened since then, we've actually had a lot of people saying to us, look, I don't know how to start, right? People keep using these words of well-being and resilience, but I don't actually know how to start and work out what to do for me or for my family or for my department. Can you help us just get an understanding? What is the difference between well-being, motivation, resilience? Is there a difference?
Yeah, there is. I think what's really important is a lot of these words people use and they're intertwined. And although they're connected, they're not the same. Well-being and resilience are two different things. So, and motivation is all about looking at why we do what we do, what motivates us to action, which is why it's really important to understand what is it that's driving us, what, gives us joy when we actually are doing it, so we make more aligned decisions in our lives.
Beautiful. So if we're talking today about assessments, okay, so a lot of people we've had talking throughout the events have discussed strategies, ideas, areas they've sort of noticed. Why should we consider looking at an actual assessment in these areas?
I think it's really important to diagnose for ourselves how we're feeling and what's actually working and what's not working, because people will talk generally about with resilience, you need to go and, eat well, exercise, get plenty of sleep, and you will feel more resilient. But we don't know where we're at actually on that scale until we actually test that. And that's what these tools, that tool, the Resilience at Work tool, that's what it does. It actually will test one of those components for us.
Okay, beautiful. Do you want to just start off by sharing a little bit about one of these tools, just for everyone in the audience to get a feel for what we're talking about and how this may benefit them?
Okay, so look, what I'll do is I'll share my screen. I'll pop up the motivation tool first. So just to let you know, the motivation tool was developed in, I think it was 2007 by a school teacher who moved into organisational development. So he developed this tool. It came to Australia in 2015. So if you haven't heard about it, it is still pretty new in Australia. So I will just share my screen now so you can see this tool. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So James Sales, the developer of this tool, I've been using it since 2015, and I have used it with well over 1,000 people in organisations, in not-for-profits and personally. So James has come up that there are actually 9 motivators. There are 9 things that actually drive us, and he's grouped them into 3 different clusters, they're called. So we've got the relationship motivators. So the relationship motivators are all about past, and they're to do with how we connect with others. So we've got the defender motivator, so which is all about security and predictability. You will often find somebody with the defender motivator in the public sector. They join big organizations because that provides a lot of safety and security for them. Then we've got the friend motivator. So the friend motivator really likes to connect with people. So easy, recognizable in workplaces. They're often, chatting to others, because that actually gives them a lot of energy, is connecting with other people. They're the people who are actually keeping an eye on others as well. I did some work with an agency, and we're working with a team, and there was no friend in the team. And they said to me, maybe we better hire somebody with a high friend. And I said, although that's a great idea to get some friends in your team, because some people do need to look after others, you'll need to employ 2 people, because our packers always have a friend in the paddock. So a friend needs another friend. So keeping an eye on 2 of them is really important. And then we've got the star motivator. Now, this motivator, which we often gets quite a hard time, because the star actually likes recognition for their work. They're very good at promoting themselves and very good at promoting what they do. Now, one thing to be really aware of with the 9 motivators is there is no bad motivator. We have to be very careful about making any judgment on them, because our top 3 might be someone else's top 3, and it's just their normal and my normal are different. So it's really about respecting all of these different motivators.
Those relationship ones must be really interesting in first response because, like you said, that friend, I imagine if I'm part of the community and there's a need to help and come together, that would drive me. That would make me feel like I'm actually contributing. Whereas possibly if I'm in police or something like that, that has a little more structure, that routine is what's driving me rather than the relationship of the individual.
Yeah, one of the things we found the last 2.5 years, because of all the change that's happened in our community and in our organisations, people have had to change. The Defender has been very disrupted, and so have found that very difficult at the moment. So because we don't know with a lot of these situations what's going to come next. So, it's really important to understand if you do have a Defender, what are some of those strategies that I can put in place that when things change, that it doesn't sort of like derail me from what I need to do. Okay, let's have a look at those achievement motivators. So this cluster is all about getting things done. So these are the motivators that are always, they set goals and they're very good at getting things done. The director motivator, which it seeks power and influence, but this isn't the sort of power and influence that is wrong spirited, I suppose. I'm trying to think of the right word. Wrong spirited for power and influence. They like to be in charge. You can always find, and my husband was a teacher and he said if he doesn't take control of the classroom, somebody else will. There'll be someone else there with the director motivator that will step up and want to take control. Just unfortunately, in a lot of organisations, people become managers because of their technical expertise. And it's not that they do a bad job, but it's not what fills their cup. So director motivator is not one that we see a lot at the top in a lot of the organisations that I've mapped. We've got the builder motivation. It seeks money and material satisfaction, but really it's just about tangible rewards, getting something tangible for their efforts. The builder is very good at setting goals. They will say, I'm going to be at this level in 12 months, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. Great people to coach because they make it easy because they really do set their own goals and they're very motivated to get something for their efforts. And then we've got the expert. So I see a lot of expert in government, so which is where they go with to sort of build on their skills. They get lots of learning opportunities when you're in government as well, so you get supported in your learning journey as well. The expert really does want to know everything there is to know about their area that they're interested in. So they don't know everything about everything, but if they're interested in an area, they will make it their goal to know everything there is. They like being asked questions about it. They like being able to demonstrate their expertise. So they're great mentors, great teachers, because they love sharing what they know. And you can be sure if you've got an expert sitting at the table, they will know probably more than other people at the table. So they're really worth, referring to see what they think. Okay, so then we've got the growth motivators. So these motivators are very fast. Now we will see, the searcher motivator, I would say just about everybody in this community would have that searcher motivator. So I'll just start with the creator. So the creator is that problem solver. They're the real innovator. They are not scared by a blank canvas. They're really happy to come in and just start the brainstorming and start coming up with solutions. They think outside the box. They actually get motivated by crisis. There's some people, who want to come in when there's a bit of structure put around a situation or a problem. The creator actually thrives on being in there at the very, very start. Then we've got the spirit. Spirit motivator really does want that freedom. They want that autonomy. Not everybody wants to be, free to do what they want in their workplace and how they want to do it, but the spirit actually does. So the spirit does seek that autonomy. if you talk to a spirit motivator, they will say their biggest dislike is micromanagement. So they may clash with some of the other motivators, particularly that director one that might want to keep checking in to make sure that they're on task. The spirit may react to that. So some of these motivators do interact in different ways with other motivators. So it's really important from a team perspective to know, what's happening. And then we've got the search, which is like seeking meaning, making a difference, so this is really important. And I'd say that would be this community by far is about, what am I doing? How am I actually achieving something that is useful, that's really worthwhile? And I think for this motivator, it's really important that you're just aware that you don't, when you want to do so much and you want to help, that you actually look after yourself and you don't burn out, because this driver, this motivational driver, can actually tip over with you wanting to help all the time. That nothing's ever a problem for the searcher. If they see value in this, if they see value in doing something, they're in. Boots and all. Doesn't matter whether you get paid, doesn't matter whether you don't get paid, as long as it's a valuable thing, you've got the searcher.
You made an interesting statement then, Mara. You said just before, it's what fills their cup. So when you're talking about that motivation and that searcher, and I so hear what you're saying about so many people that are working, whether it is AMBOs or whether it is volunteering, that purpose and that impact on others is such a core drive, but it is almost conflicting because if we give so much of ourselves. So thinking about that, filling our cup, how does knowing those motivations help us rebalance when we're feeling at a loss or anything like that?
Yeah, I think what's really important is if you do know what is driving you, if you know what's important about you, then you can be comfortable with where you're at. So, that's why it's important to take stock. So with the searcher, if you're starting to feel burnout and you go, oh, that's my searcher, just he's driving and driving and driving me, trying to add value, make a difference, do things that are really great, and things like that. But knowing that, you actually go, oh, well, that's just my searcher. It's not that I'm unfulfilled. It's just that it's really important. So I just want to keep doing it. But I have to learn to manage myself. So if I've got a high director and I like managing people, like, your leadership, first responders who are leaders and things like that, it's really important for them to understand, although we want to get things done, that I don't take advantage of my searcher and burn them out, because they will just keep working and working and working, because that's just what drives them. That's really important. So, is that the sort of thing that you're thinking, Catherine?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we've had a great comment from the room. Someone shared that they can actually see, as you're speaking, they're seeing parts of themselves in different aspects of what you're sharing. And in profiling tools, the percentages can change or flow when you're with different people or situations in that public or that personal life. How do you think this is beneficial for someone that is in that? I just really do refer to the ongoing nature of the environment we're in. And so there is a high level of fatigue. Is there a benefit to us connecting in because of that, or should it be more proactive? What does this mean in terms of recognizing those changes or the different situations of what could be impacting me?
Yeah, so I think this is something that's really important to recognise is these motivators don't change every day. So they do take people that I coach, and that I would map them maybe once a year, or if there's been something significant. So 6 months into the pandemic, you would remap and go, how are you travelling? What's changed? What's become important for you now that wasn't important for you before? So we found with the work we were doing in the UK and some of the work we were doing here in 2020, we found that people, Defender Motivator, which was all about safety and security, all of a sudden started going to the top of people's motivational maps. And it may not have been there before. People's Builder Motivator, which was about getting something tangible, people weren't able to work. It had affected their finances, it had affected their livelihoods, and things like that. And that would be happening today again with businesses, with the floods. And every time there's a disruption, then that will become important. So the builder was becoming a really important motivator as well. So it's really important for you to check in and go, what's actually happening for me? I'll give a personal story. When I was trained in motivational maps in 2015, I was working in government at the time. I was running a part of the HR for one of our Commonwealth agencies, and I had a high director. I had a team and I was responsible for performance across a government agency, and my director was in my top 3. Now I left government and work for myself now, doing lots of different things. I have the 3 top growth ones and experts, my number 4. So director's gone to the bottom because I don't have staff, necessarily a big team of staff sitting under me now. So things have changed for me, and things will change as circumstances change.
Beautiful. And if, because one of the other questions that's come through, which we do tend to get quite a lot, is if I'm keen to do this, and I know it's something we'll talk about later, is if people do want to join, we will be running workshops, but how confidential is the information? If I'm answering things, you've talked about working with some teams, how confidential is that information?
Yeah, so this is really important, is that, then this is something that we have done here in Australia since the start. We never share anybody's information without permission. So when the process would be that we would map somebody and we would have a coaching conversation with them about their map, helping them to understand what's happening for them, and that they would walk away with some actions of what they're going to do to keep themselves or build their motivation levels. When we do team maps, we don't share the information. We share what people's motivators are because there's no judgment on motivators, but we don't share any scoring or how motivated people are. That's a personal thing, but it's good for your colleagues to know that you have a high friend. So a quick example is I did a workshop for a team of high experts, high searcher, high experts. And I was in the workshop and we looked at the team map, and somebody said, "Who's the friend?" And this girl goes, "Oh, that's me." And they go, "We didn't know that friend was important to you." Now, these people had been mapped 3 years earlier. So this girl had joined the team in the previous 6 months. And they go, "Oh, we're really sorry. We didn't know friend was important to you because you're always off talking to your old team." And and they apologized to her and they said, and this was a team who never went to any functions. They never walked to get coffee together. They never did anything together. They just sat down. They were high experts and they just wanted to work on their own, on their stuff. They didn't necessarily want to have the informal conversations, which this girl really thrived from. So, it's really important to actually be aware of what's happening for other people as well, because none of us set out to ruin somebody else's day. But if we don't understand them and we don't understand what's important to them, we might actually inadvertently be making things difficult for someone.
And that's a good example where you're saying that all of them had a similar one, but before you said expert is in what I'm interested in. So I guess we're not all the same just because we might be motivated by that same bit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So my searcher, which is all about helping people, I love working with people, might be different from somebody who is really interested in protecting a wombat or protecting, compliance or regulatory measures or things like that. So, yeah, that's what's important to understand our own profile.
Beautiful. And with we've just had someone share that that filling your cup is so important, that how full is it and how can I fill it? Can you share with us some examples? There are continuing challenges, and particularly for the guys that we're speaking with, where it may be my personal world. This may be my hometown that is flooding at the moment.
Yeah.
It might be my family that are suffering with COVID at the moment. There's just so many personal things that can be influencing. How does this knowledge possibly help me? So could you give some examples of some of those motivators you feel may be hit at the moment, and how knowing that could help me improve my space, fill my cup?
Yeah. So if you can, the chances are you can recognize, the more you know about these motivators, the more you recognize what they look like and how they operate. So that defender is, those people who are just struggling at the moment. So it's become very important to them for their safety and their security. One of the things you can do is lots of communication. So one of the most important things for the defender is to know what's happening, know what's available. So knowledge for them helps them feel safe. So the defender motivator is, making sure they know what's the government's got available for them, what the services are that you offer if you're in a service industry. They're the sort of things, but also asking people what they need. So that particular motivator needs to be asked, what is it that you need that will make you feel safe? So asking those questions. And that comes back to that "Are you okay?" that Gary talked about last week, is that checking in with them, because they're a relational motivator. Okay, so they're interested. The other one is the friend, is that picking up the phone. We think of people all the time, but do we do anything about it? The friend motivator is that connection. It is making a connection in some way. And if you can't get to somebody, is to try and get somebody to connect with them where they are. So if you know somebody in the area where your family is, or somebody is that are affected by the floods, they're safe, tap in with another service organisation or something and go, can you just check in with them? Can you just check with them? Because that's a really important thing for the friend, is to know that they're not isolated. So a lot of the friends have struggled during the pandemic because they were sent home from work, or if they didn't have work, they were sent home. We've had a lot of lockdowns across Australia in different areas. The friend has suffered, from that informal connections. People only, did meetings because they didn't want to take up a lot of everybody's time, Zoom time, all that sort of stuff. There's all that change fatigue, there's Zoom fatigue. And so the friend actually needs a bit more of that informal sort of conversations. So
that's adding a lot to that self-awareness. And we've had a comment from the group that's such a good point that you're making, that whether we're a first responder or not, we're human, and we need to be mindful of that cup and where we're at. So really actually have time and opportunity to self-reflect and become aware, because that's how we can better maintain ourselves, right? So being able to prepare and be conscious means when we're in an operational time, we're able to check in a little more effectively with, hang on, that's something that's important to me. Where's it at now? Or how can I be utilizing that? So, great comments from the room. Thank you all.
Yeah, I think I just want to give an example of an agency. I did some work with an agency, and they had a very high searcher. They were working really very long hours. They weren't getting a lot of love from the media. They weren't getting a lot of love from the government, but they had a job to do, and they were really demotivated. This was their highest motivator, was searcher for the whole team, yet it was the lowest satisfied. So it actually wasn't getting what it needed. So we workshopped it out to see, what we could do about it. And they actually look after a part of the environment. So a simple solution that they came up with, because it's always good for people to come up with their own solutions, was that they did a field trip out to remind themselves why they were working, what they were trying to protect, what they were trying to save. So they just did a simple field trip. And that's something that's really important, is when you know what's driving you, you need to have line of sight, particularly that searcher, line of sight of what you're trying to achieve. So getting feedback, are you actually doing that's really important as well.
Conscious of time, did you want to share a little bit about the resilience, and then I'll come back to those questions that we've got about motivations?
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so I'll move now on to the Resilience at Work tool. Now, this is an Australian tool. So where am I? Here we go. So this tool has been around for a few years, and it's come actually out of Australia. It's called Resilience at Work tool. So the definition of the resilience here is an individual's capacity to manage everyday stress of work and remain healthy, adapt and learn from unexpected setbacks and prepare for future challenges proactively. So this isn't about we talk about resilience, and we hear people saying, they're very resilient because they clawed their way back, but it is so much more to resilience than just being able to claw your way back. We want people to be able to, cord was out. We need people to be able to understand all the components of resilience and also put strategies in place so that they can be ready and prepared when a challenge does come, that they're prepared and they know what to do. So it's about building up certain components, which we're going to have a look at the 7 components of resilience. Now, these 7, these are part of a workshop that we do. So what I'll do is I'll just explain what each one is. I'll talk a little bit about a risk for each of those, what the risk could be. And I've just, pulled out some of the workshop suggestions for you as well, just to give you a bit of an idea of some of the things that we would be doing in the workshop for these components. So the first one is living authentically. So are our values aligned in our workforce, in the workplace that we're in? Do we, are we utilising all our strengths? So is it a good match for us that those things that are strengths in our skill set, are they actually being utilised? The other thing is, are we managing ourselves emotionally in that role? So are we living as a way that we're true to ourselves? So knowing our values and living them is really important. So one of the things we do is, we have a chat with people about, what's important, what's an important value to you? Because one thing I have noticed is that it's when our values are crossed, when we have disagreements in the workplace, and it's not necessarily a personality conflict. Often it's a motivational conflict, that it's a different motivator, but it also could be that one of our values have been crossed. So if we're an organisation that work health and safety is really important and we align with that, and then we see that there's shortcuts, that would be our values being crossed. If we're in a Christian organisation and then we see behaviours or things that we don't believe demonstrate, what we believe that should look like, then that would be another value being crossed. So that living authentically is really important for us to check in there. So a couple of things we could do now is strengths, having a thinking about in my workplace, am I actually able to utilise my strengths? Is it something that I'm getting lots of opportunities? Because there is nothing, it's very difficult if we go to work and we're doing things that are outside our level of expertise, and it just doesn't bring us joy. And we don't feel like we're actually performing well. So the other thing is managing your emotions. How do I manage myself when there's conflict at work? So we've got simple things that Katie Tunks-Leach talked about the other day, around managing yourself is like, take deep breaths, relax your facial features, relax your body, have an open stance, don't be closed, just open yourself up and relax. And the other thing you can do is to replace judgment with curiosity. Now, I use that a lot, is that when we don't understand or we don't agree, is be curious about that rather than judge that situation. Just be curious.
An example of that, because I think that's a really interesting point, because particularly when we're in a stress response state, we will tend to judge more. And yes, there's lots of dynamics that we've had great sharing of throughout Summit about the hierarchy or the structures or people's
Yeah.
perceptions. How would you recommend someone do that, suspending the judgment to flip it to curiosity?
Yeah. So it's like it's reframing. So, I think it's really important to ask the question. And sometimes we don't ask the questions because we might be in a hierarchical situation and we don't want to question because that might make our situation more vulnerable if we're that person that asks the question. But I think it's important that you frame it in such a way as I just need to understand why it is that we're going A, B, and C, and just give people an opportunity to explain it out for themselves. But I know that people who have a high defender, they don't want to raise their head and be that person that, appears to be difficult, by asking the question. But I think it's really important that we do, and you just approach it with, not aggression, and just go, why are we doing this? What's the rationale and the reasoning behind that? So I think replacing judgment with curiosity is probably one of the greatest things I've ever learned. It saved me a lot.
Freeing as well, isn't it?
It is actually, because judgment can be quite a burden to carry around when people don't do things the way you think they should have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So our second one is finding your calling. So this actually aligns with that searcher motivator, is about seeking, the sort of work that that really does fill your cup. That stuff that, it doesn't feel like work because it's this, things that you really like to do, that you get a lot of joy from. So it is that seeking the why. Simon Sinek talks about the why, and that's, if you think about something that you've done, and this is a little activity that we'll do, is that you think about something, where you've worked and that you really enjoyed it and didn't feel like work. That will be your calling. That will be that searcher for you, if you think back to that sort of work. So
I imagine that links to that moral injury. We're talking to Mark tomorrow about moral injury when there's a conflict, but that finding your calling, I imagine having that sense of calling to help. And we see this with nurses quite a lot, or medics, psychologists, allied health, as much as those that are in police and other uniforms, is I'm called to it, but then the reality of it is quite confronting, or maybe not quite what I thought, and that can provide some internal conflict.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to understand that we are human, and we may be called to a role, but there may be aspects of that role that actually don't sit well with us. And it's about understanding that and I think accepting that to a certain degree, that as long as, the majority of what you do is something that aligns with your values and something that you feel like you're a part of and that you belong to, and you feel like you're doing, what you're setting out to do, and that's making a difference or achieving something, you can generally manage those other bits. But you need to be looking after yourself and understanding what those bits are. So, okay, so that's finding your calling. If you're a leader, just making sure that your staff can see the bigger picture. And I know if you're a leader, you can, there's so much to do, particularly in the environment that we're in at the moment. But just, one way to, build your staff back when you know that they're feeling a bit fatigued, and that is just to, remind them what they're doing. Show them, talk about some of the things that they did yesterday. What have you done in the last week? You've done this in the last week, and we just really appreciate it, because people need to hear. We don't think people need to hear that they've done something well, because not everybody wants awards and, those sort of tangible things back. Some people just want to know that their efforts in the last month have actually achieved something for somebody else, particular for this motivator, and that's that searcher, and this finding your calling. Okay, so if you're a leader, let people, don't just pat people on the back. That's praise. What you need to do is tell them what they did and how it actually achieved something so they can do it again and again and again. All right, let's have a look at the third one, is maintaining perspective. So this is about staying optimistic, focusing on the solution to setbacks and to problems, and buffering negative energy of others. Like, how am I tracking with that? Am I optimistic? Have I slipped? Because optimism, is a really critical part of resilient thinking. So, it's really important to go, am I being a bit more negative? Because we know that when we're being negative, it affects us physically, it affects the team, it affects people around us. When, we can't see anything optimistic in a situation, we can't be optimistic. So one of the exercises we do is we look at thinking traps. So I've got an example here, is personalizing things. So that would be, we frequently feel that we're at fault. And so we personalize the situation. We go, oh, why does it always happen to me? I should have done. And I think that I should have done is something that we really need to be careful of, that we don't make every situation about us and then take on the burden of the situation. So we could reframe. So reframing is really important. And this is what we do a bit of work in this workshop, is about, there was nothing more I could have done in that circumstance. It was outside of my control. It was outside of my control. And I think it's really important for leaders and in particular, to talk to their staff about, you can control this, you can't control this. The pandemic, we could not control the pandemic. But in the pandemic, you can control, your own environment. So helping people, who are struggling, is to go, what can you control and what can't you control?
That's more natural to some people, isn't it? That optimism and that reframing. Some people seem to feel, because it's something that I notice people say to me a lot in the wellbeing work I do, is, oh, but my partner or my family or the guys at work or whatever it is, they're really negative. They've got that downward sort of focus. So we've all got, I guess, a different natural level of how we view and how we see things from that hope view.
Yeah. And I think because negativity is, if there's too much negativity, it can, slip over into toxicity in the workplace. And then it's very hard for our team to actually come out of that when you've got more people who are negative about the way forward than there is people who have hope and are optimistic about the way forward, which is why it's really important for people to get some awareness on their situation. So, okay. All right, mastering stress. Our fourth one is mastering stress. Just checking how we're going for time. Okay, having good self-care routines at work and at home, managing your time and your workload effectively, and creating a sense of life-work balance. Not work-life balance, life-work balance. So, mastering stress. And there's quite a lot of practical things out there that talk to us about how we can master stress. But one of the things I'd like to say to everybody here in the room is, what are your early signs of overload? Sit down and go, are you aware what happens in your body, or how do you react to things rather than respond to things? What are those things that actually are letting you know that you're actually starting to get overloaded? And that's something I think we all need to be aware of for ourselves. Managing your time and workload. Another part of the workshop is that we actually have a little bit of a look at what sort of things we're taking on that are not a part of our role. Now, this isn't the surge work that you step up and that you do something for someone. This isn't around that surge work, and there's a lot of that happening at the moment where people are covering each other. This is on a regular basis. What are you doing that isn't actually part of your role? That could be taking away and being detrimental to your well-being. So, and then we talk about what do we actually do about it. And what's the motive behind taking on that extra? Is it that high searcher that goes, I just want to help everybody? But it's actually not going to be helpful for my own stress levels. And I think we need to realise that we are human, and that, we can go from good stress to bad stress. And then it's going to take longer for us to recover to be able to help again. So much better managing ourselves as we go. All right, number 5, interacting cooperatively is all about seeking feedback on our performance and asking for help when we need help. So a lot of us are happy, particularly this community. I would say, hands up, I'm happy to help whoever needs help, and I'll provide support as best I can. Whatever you need, I'm there. But how do I know that I'm actually working well with people, and people are working well with me and giving me what I need, because often we give out, but we don't get what we need, and then we burn out. So I think this is a really important one for us to look at, where are we getting our validation from? Who is the person that we would go to get objective and valued feedback from, and how are we going to approach that person? So, and it is all about interacting cooperatively with our team, with our colleagues, supporting them, but also putting a hand up and asking for help. And a lot of time the people who are givers don't ask for anything back. So, we in this tool, we actually test that to see how we're going in that area, and we workshop around how we're getting the support. Number 6 is staying healthy. So we know to sleep. There is a lot around here on looking after ourselves and making sure that we function as best we can. And I'll just go on to number 7, just in case there's any questions, is all about building networks. Now, this is all about developing and maintaining our professional and our personal support networks. And it's really important with our networks. We often think of network from the professional sense, like if we're, keen to go up levels and things, we go, I'll get a mentor, or I'll get myself a coach, and I'll do all these sort of things. But we need to do a bit of a network overlay of who are the people in our space that we need. So we do this thing called a network map. And what we do is we look at who do we go to for advocacy? Who do we go to for professional career advice? Who is our practical backup for maybe our children or our elderly parents? Who's our backup at home? Who do we go to, for emotional support? So we do a bit of a network map, and then we have a look and we go, are we overplaying any of those? Like, is there somebody there that's meeting 4 or 5 of those different components for us? And is that a good thing or not? Because we might burn them out, and then we will need to look, they will need to be looked after. Like they won't be there. So we could be overplaying some of our networks, and there could be gaps. There could be things that, we have nobody to go to, nobody to support us. So I was talking to somebody recently, and they wanted to do something, and they said, I have literally got nobody in my life that could look after one of my children for 2 hours. I've literally nobody in my life. I don't have care organised. I have no network, no contact with anyone that I would leave my 2-year-old with. So, I think it's really important that we do have a look at all those different parts of our life and go, who is that person? And, they're supporting me, but am I giving them what they need as well?
That's an interesting point, because I was speaking with some people just recently who were in exactly that point of feeling very isolated, going through a very, very difficult trauma-based situation, feeling like there was no one there. But once we started speaking, there were people who would happily help, but they weren't necessarily thinking of them as that support network, because they always flipped it that they needed to help those other people.
Yeah.
And so it was a really interesting sort of light bulb moment of, oh, actually, you're right, I could possibly be asking.
Yeah.
Great sharing from the room about what's connecting, what are those things that do trigger or support you. And the comment that, it is first responders, not first reactors. So we do need to sometimes think back to how we are, managing our own well-being to be able to respond in our best possible way.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just going to share that something that we did notice with the one of the teams. I'm going to do some work with a team, and what's happened is that the last couple of years things have changed the way they do their work, and they've got that really high expert, that high finding their calling. So they've been in this work, this team in particular, and it's a couple hundred people have been doing the same thing for a very long time. So they're experts in the field. They're in a big organisation, so they've got that high defender. So safety and security, that the more they know about their job, the more safe they feel. Now, with the pandemic, they've had to change the way technology has changed the way that they do their work now. So their results are showing that they're struggling. So we not only have absenteeism, increased absenteeism is a bit of a sign for you to watch out with your colleagues, or if you don't feel like going to work, or you just go, I'm done, I just don't want to do this anymore. It's really important that you understand what it is about why you don't want to do something anymore. And we're going in to work with this group of people to build their resilience. So they can not only measure where they're at now, because there's nothing wrong with taking stock. It's a good thing it doesn't matter how you feel, take stock and understand it is really important. And then you can go, okay, what are the strategies? What do I need to put in that will actually help me go forward? Because the chances are with this wheel, with the 7, there will be areas in this that you're doing okay. It won't be the whole 7. If you're concerned about your resilience at the moment, it won't be the whole 7 that will need attention. The chances are that there might be a couple of areas that you're doing okay in. So you need to maintain that. You don't let that go to give something else some attention. But they're very simple. With the workshop, they're very simple strategies, and they're very simple activities that we can do so you can be better prepared going forward.
It's interesting because as you were going through each of those, as you said, there's somewhere I go, okay, I feel really comfortable in that, but that one possibly has been hit for whatever reason. So it almost is a relief to think, oh no, some of those I'm feeling quite comfortable in.
Yeah.
I don't feel like the whole world is out of kilter, as it were. So so much value.
Yeah, and it's contextual. It's like the motivators. It's all contextual. So it's all about my story and where I'm at the moment. And often people, I'd say in the first responder community, and people probably in this summit, are all about everybody else. But the thing is, when we talk about Steve Covey's the 7 successful habits, the first 3 are about looking after ourselves first, so before we can look after somebody else.
The old oxygen mask theory, isn't
it?
Yeah,
it is the oxygen mask theory. And although we all know that, we find ourselves 11 o'clock at night, midnight, trying to, flick out some emails quickly and trying to get information to people and trying to help people. And we're thinking about it on the weekend, and, we cannot sustain that. So this resilience at work is about sustaining those 7 components. If we look at the motivation, it's understanding what drives us, what makes us take action, and then understanding how we look after ourselves in all of this, and having those skills that will equip us to actually be the best we can be so we can help others.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mari. I might get you to stop sharing just so I can share through the resources that we need for everyone before we do wrap up. That's a lot of really golden things that you've said there. And I love how it was able to break down, because quite often when we're feeling in a point where well-being has been hit, it does feel all consuming. And so one of the things that we're really focused on with Wellbeing Australia is, yes, we acknowledge the technical and the mental health challenges we will have, but we also seek to have a greater understanding, because all too many of us are focusing on everyone else or something else, or delaying that focus on self. So I think you've given such a really interesting insight to two ways to see who we are. One question that I've had come through is, is there value in doing it myself, or do I have to do it? You've talked about teams in your session. Do I have to do it as part of a team, or can I do it just by myself?
Yeah, no, you can do it as part of yourself. Most definitely. It is a tool you can do on your own. Both of them. I work with people and they just do the tool, and that's quite okay, and have a conversation about it. So not a problem.
Beautiful. And you have kindly offered to join our workshop series. So following this summit, which will wrap up the presentation sessions in the next few days, actually, we will move into a workshop series that will be around May, June, July. So everyone will be receiving some information about that. And Mari's kindly offered to do one session dedicated on unpacking motivators, where anyone who's interested, or their team as a whole, depending how they want to structure it, can actually join that workshop and do some of those activities. And then a separate session that will be more around that resilience. So there was a number of things you said, and there was comments coming through from the room about that reframing and acceptance, and how it's something we need to probably be very conscious of, because that automation of I see the negative, or I see the problem, or I wish I had of, I should have, all of those things you mentioned are so quick. Until we start putting that pause in, we probably can't do that filling of the cup or the oxygen mask. That is what we're really wanting to. Some fantastic resources in terms of books that people have been enjoying. So definitely happy to share those on. And I think the other piece that really connected with me, particularly around that self-awareness piece, was that suspending the judgment and being able to really engage the curiosity, because I think it is something that we forget to do. And when we're talking about ourselves and we're talking about moving ourselves to a better place, you touched on how at certain points in people's lives or careers, different motivators may be more important to them. I think that's something we forget. Actually, what is filling us and where we're at will change. Take away all the external challenges. We will have points where there's different things that are important. I know when my children were starting school, it shifted what was important to me. And as they've got older and finished school and going through the next phases, again, it's been an opportunity for me to go, well, hang on, where am I? How's that impacting me? And what can I do to position myself better? So yeah, great suggestion. So much going through my brain right now. So I just, in the last couple of minutes, would love to ask everyone to take a moment to complete our survey, just so that we can actually make sure we are giving you more information on what is important to you. I mentioned the workshop series. I will share with you, there are a couple coming up. So Mari will be doing her too. And then we had 3 that we were hoping to have over the last week or so, but due to all of the dynamics of the challenges we're facing, a number of attendees have asked us to postpone them. So we have moved them all to May or June. We will have Mark Croswell going into a lot more detail around those ethics and values in connection to your well-being. If you missed the session last summit on Mark speaking about moral injury, please do go back and have a look at it, or join us with Mark Layson tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, where he will unpack moral injury, particularly in the context of first responders, and how that will impact us from a holistic and a spiritual sense. We'll be having a workshop with Kerry Howard around how we deal with that stigma and that fear of reprisal to better position ourselves. Amazing speaker as well, very, very practical in terms of that psych focus of how we protect and care for ourselves, having lived through it herself. And finally, we'll have Graham Bent, who will be talking about PTSD in moving forward into thriving. We had a lot of feedback about people being given feedback that their trauma was so extensive they would never recover. And Graham was not happy about that, as we weren't as well, because we do believe there is hope and there is a next phase. If you are feeling like you're at a particular point of struggle or you need support, we encourage you to please reach out for help. On the screen are a number of different resources or associations you are very welcome to reach out to. If you are unsure, feel free to reach out to us and we will direct you to some people who can support you. We really don't want anyone feeling like they're in a space where they're not able to move forward and get the support that is there for them. So please do take time to reach out if that is needed. Just in closing, as I mentioned, Mark is on tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock going through helping us with how we assess those values and how that's really influencing. So that will be a lovely follow on from today. Thank you, Mari. And we will wrap up the summit at 12 o'clock tomorrow with Inspector Ali Fenwick and Desley White sharing from an HR and a very personal viewpoint how we can better connect with ourselves in a career transition. So how we can identify our skills and our values, and so start to see ourselves beyond that space of where we are at in that time. Questions come through, is there a cost for the workshops? There is a very minimal cost for the workshop, and Wellbeing Australia members are able to access a discount. Feel free to email us, but we will send all of those details through to you. We have tried to provide everything as free as we possibly can, but unfortunately, due to the structure and everything of workshops, we have had to charge for those. We have had support from all of the commissioners and from Resilience New South Wales and Australia in terms of this is a great opportunity, so potentially people are able to use their PD budget for it as well. Thank you for sharing. I have shared that survey link and we'll send you everything. Please join me in thanking Mari for her time today. Thank you, Mari, for your honesty and your sharing, and looking forward to seeing everyone tomorrow. Thank you.